Who's cold? It's the Bite Me Podcast. This is the Bite Me Podcast. Welcome in. I'm John Lopez, and as always, hey, they got nothing else to do today but bundle up and stay at home. That is Captain Dean Thomas, Captain Caleb McCumber, and Captain Scott Null. This show we got a bunch of topics for today, but I got a hunch we're just going to dig in on every single level of some of the things that are going on up and down the coast, which, by the way, that means all the way from Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, obviously Texas. This winter storm Enzo, and don't get me started on that, although I probably will say something because that drives me nuts, why they call winter storms now. I mean, they give them names now. But this is the Bite Me Podcast, and of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Go to Podbean, and you can subscribe there. We host it, so you can get every single podcast we've ever done. And certainly iTunes, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcast, you can get it there as well. And the Bite Me group page on Facebook is always popping. Get a lot of topics there and get a lot of feedback on a lot of things we talk about here. So let's get started. Look, man, this is a pretty bad storm. Scott is our resident pseudoscientist. And so we're going to start with Scott here, but you guys just weigh in, raise your hand and jump in. And this time actually raise your hand as opposed to last week when y'all were expecting me to read your minds. But yeah, man, it was pretty wild here. I will start with this, Scott, though. And this just a little personal, not horrible, not like my last boat ramp confessional, but a little bit of a bump in the road this morning. You guys know I have a day job over at Sports Radio 610 in Houston, talking sports and all that good stuff. So I was all set to go, man. I warmed up the truck. I got everything ready. You going to be here? Yeah, I'll be there, man. Don't worry about me. We're going to do the show. I even tweeted, hey, we're going to be live and local, Sports Radio 610. I ended up having to delete that tweet because I backed out. I got a new truck. Okay. Love my truck. Loved everything about it. It had everything that I ever wanted on it. And except it didn't have four-wheel drive, and I always have trucks with four-wheel drive. And I was like, how much do I really go to the beach these days? I keep my boat in the marina. You know, how much am I really going to ranches and stuff? If I do, I can probably go with someone else. So I backed out of my driveway, which is on a really not even a very steep incline, maybe 15 degrees. And I backed up and I pressed the gas and the wheels started turning. And then I stopped and the whole truck just started sliding backwards down this hill. I went, oh crap, this is in the thick of all the snow and ice and everything else, sleet I should say. And so it was snowing and I couldn't get any traction, so I just backed up all the way down the hill, found a nice flat spot and parked it there and told the boys, yeah, it ain't happening today, man. It ain't happening today. So I did get the truck back in the driveway once it started melting, but this is the real deal, Scott. What do you think, man?
Love the way Seth handled it. When you found out you weren't coming in because you went down a hill, he says, damn, he can't manage the topography of Houston and get around a hill.
No, I couldn't. I really couldn't.
Houston's kind of known for being flat, John.
It is very flat, except there's a little bit of an incline in front of my house, and it was cold, snowy concrete, and I just started sliding and sliding and sliding. By the way, probably tomorrow I'll post it, but I highlighted the one embarrassing boat ramp confession.
Alexa, mute all notifications.
Yeah, we all heard that. So
I'm tired of hearing it.
So the whole 14-minute video of she's still going. She said, "Screw you, Caleb."
Yeah.
The whole 14-minute conversation of my boat ramp confessional when I had cramps and paddled with a net and everything else. I'll post that tomorrow so people can just hear that if you haven't already. But Scott, the first thing that struck me about this, and I just mentioned it, it's not just here. It's lower coast, it's middle coast, it's upper coast, it's Louisiana, it's Mississippi. Florida's getting hit in the panhandle hard right now. This is the whole Gulf Coast. So with that in mind, no one here is saying it's the 2021 freeze, but it might affect more, right?
Well, it's definitely more widespread than 21 freeze. I think we're okay. I mean, we'll get into some temperatures in here in a little bit, but we had such a steady downward fall with the cold fronts. We've had multiple cold fronts leading into this. The ones where we've gotten in trouble, like 21, it was warm. all the way. We had a warm winter, and the fish just weren't acclimated to it, and that one just seemed like it caught some fish off guard. The really bad ones that we've had in the past, 83, hell, it was 75 degrees one day and in the single digits the next day. Those are the kind that really wear on the fish.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this one, maybe they had enough time to get to some deeper water. Yeah, the jetties, I was looking at the temperatures at the jetties and it wasn't so bad. The bays are on the edge for being too cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be careful. There's a lot of folks that jump on Facebook and start throwing these predictions, and this is what's going to happen. It happened with the 21 freeze. Is happening now, and at the end of the day, we really don't know what it's going to be until it plays out. In 21, everybody was jumping up and down. This didn't kill fish; they're fine. And 10 days later, it killed a heck of a lot of fish. But I do agree with Scott wholeheartedly that there was a gradual decline with this one. And so it probably slid them off where they needed, or the bulk of them. I think there'll still be dead fish, but I don't think it's going to be a huge wipeout. I was going through looking at all the different tide stations, and everything north of Rockport, the lowest I saw in the lower Laguna was 52 on water temps. That 21 freeze, it was just nuking cold down there too.
Yeah.
So it seems like Port O'Connor north, maybe San Antonio Bay, somewhere. The lowest I saw in Rockport was like 46, and that still sucks, but it's not quite catastrophic. Up here on our coast, we've got water 39, 41, all that kind of stuff. But I will throw the asterisk out there that I've seen so many folks jumping up and down on all these different storms throughout the years, and at the end of the day, we'll know when we know, but this one isn't as alarming.
Dean, when will we know? When we see him floating?
Yeah, well, that's going to be the most obvious sign. But no, man, after the big freeze, it took a couple days until it was really obvious. What's going on over here? I mean, I drove down to the marina. I was over there today, and the Baitfish are just in the canals. They're in the channels. I mean, they moved into some shelter. There's a lot of birds in there. There's actually dolphins in the marina up under the boats. But just like Scott and Caleb said, I mean, there was warning before this. The water temperature at the Port A jetties is 49 degrees. It was 49 degrees a week ago after the last cold front. So, time will tell. There's only one way to find out is to wait and go look. And even this afternoon, I mean, now, even though the air temperature is cold, the sun is shining on the water now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we got a bright sunny afternoon here. So, it'll help. But tonight here, it's going to get 30, 29 degrees right at that range. But it's not 9 degrees. It's not 14. It's not that life-threatening. And plus the fact that it dropped gradually. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, man. It's check in next week. We'll have all the answers.
Yeah. I mean, I think the coldest weather is yet to come. But like Dean said, we've got some sun out and all that kind of stuff. We have people asking, or you asked Dean, how long will it take? In the last freeze, Dr. McKee, who is the biologist for the Heart Institute and who knows who else, he told me 10 days. 10 days is what it takes for a fish to float. And he was pretty well spot on the money. 10 days. For the first 7 days, it was guides on Facebook. Oh, yeah, no, the fishing's great. It didn't hurt anything. Day 10's when the big float happened. So, like I said, we'll wait and see.
The other thing, though, Scott, go ahead.
One good thing that I've been in communications with a buddy of mine that he's one of the shot callers for one of the biggest barge companies.
That's what I was going to ask about. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I learned some stuff talking to him, and I had to write some of it down because there's a lot of words involved with this one. But GICA, the Gulf Intercoastal Control Agency, I can't even remember what the C stood for. What happens is they put out a voluntary stand down on using it. What I wasn't aware of is the people that control whether those barges run or not, It starts with the oil trading companies, the people that are filling up those barges and paying these guys to move it. Whenever the barges shut down, it is, quote, voluntary by them, but most of the customers say, yeah, you can shut down if you want to, but we're still charging you every day. It's going to cost you money. So when these barges stand down, it costs the company a lot of money. So I think it's really cool that again, my buddy's company, they have pulled a voluntary stand down, and it's primarily in the lower Laguna what they're looking at and what they're concerned with for stunned turtles and fish. There's not as much deep water in the Laguna. The intercoastal just kind of cuts through it, compared to like Galveston or something where there's just deep water all over the place. But that's some things I picked up. But I do know that the company that controls the most of the barges is standing down for 48 hours, which is really admirable.
Now,
I can tell you who don't give a rat's ass, and that's the Port of Corpus Christi, because the tankers. Oh man, it's a nonstop parade. I mean, and that's a huge concern around here. I mean,
well, explain it for our listeners who don't know what barges can do with cold water.
Well, they churn the bottom. The fish become lethargic. They go set in deeper holes. They become very lazy, kind of stagnant. And then here comes the barge down the canal. And I mean, you can see them when the tide drops out, they're churning mud. They're churning it from the bottom to the top. So it pushes all the cold water, mixes it in with the warm water, and it stirs those fish up. They don't have the energy to overcome that, and it kills them. And the Port of Corpus Christi has tankers that, an artery that goes from the Port of Corpus Christi right through Redfish Bay out to Port Aransas jetties. And it is nonstop tanker traffic, big boats that, I mean, they churn a mud trail. They throw a wake from the ship channel that rolls all the way to the causeway to Ransom Island, to BNR Flats. I mean, they throw a 3 and 4 foot roller across the entire bay. So yeah, they cause a lot of turbulence when the fish are very lethargic and they can't really tolerate that kind of turbulence.
Scott, here's the other thing I was thinking about, because we talk about, well, it's not like 21. And while that is true, 21 wasn't that long ago, and it killed a lot of fish. So even a little bit of a hit here, I'm guessing, might feel more significant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers were bouncing back. So hopefully, we don't get hit and we don't lose a whole bunch. But the surveys afterwards said we lost 60% of our trout around this area. And it was noticeable. I mean, it was very noticeable. You go out in areas where you could normally pick up, a handful of trout every time you drifted across an opening. There weren't any. I was just starting to get back to that this fall, where I'd be floating across a flat and then I'd hit one of the little channels, let a jig drop down a little bit, catch 2 or 3 trout while we're drifting across it. It was getting back to where it was. Hopefully this didn't ding them too bad.
Rest in peace to the 100 trout that died according to the survey in East Matagorda Bay. I'll never let it go.
No,
I will never forget that.
I did spend a couple hours down on the intercoastal today, and I did not see a single barge go by. So that was good. I was down there messing around, throwing the thermometer in some deep water.
And
it's cold down deep. that did kind of bother me. I went into the marinas, and I threw down in there where it's over by Jimmy's house. I was over there for a little bit. His is about 8 feet with a mud bottom, and it was 40 degrees on the bottom. I went to the intercoastal in several places, and it was 41 to 42 at the bottom of the intercoastal. And that's pretty damn cold for the lower end of the water column. There's really not a thermocline going on, where you got some good high 40s water down deep. So that is kind of worrisome that the deep water penetrated that far. The reason it did was because we had so much wind. We had 40-something mile-an-hour winds here last night.
Oh my goodness.
It was ripping, and it was blowing northeast, which goes right straight down the intercoastal. So that churned everything up. It wasn't blowing across the intercoastal where it had a shorter fetch. So I don't know. This is going to be a wait and see. There's going to be some dead fish. I mean, there already are, and hearing some reports in Galveston here and there. Some guys got floating fish in the canals, mostly bait fish, which is what we saw last time.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you saw bait fish float up. The smaller the fish is, quicker it's going to float. So hopefully we don't have that problem, but it looks like Louisiana's probably going to take a bigger hit than we are on this one.
Yeah, Louisiana's getting smoked, man. I was there the day before the snow, and it sure didn't have 10 inches of snow like they have right now. Over on Angler U, James Sanchez posted this little thing, and if you guys don't know who James is, he's a biologist that works with the Heart Research Institute. But spotted trout, water temperature at 45 degrees, lethal effects after 24 hours. Redfish, 39 degrees is what it takes for lethal effects after 24 hours. Flounder and all of that, they never existed anyway. They're fake. But an hour. I mean, I'm sorry, 24 hours at 39 degrees for red drum, 24 hours for 45 at spotted sea trout is when it starts getting the mortality.
So it sounds, Dean, like the snow and everything was cool to look at. It certainly affected, as we've been talking about. But what's really might get us is tonight's going to be colder. And that's where you got to watch.
But we don't have that 40-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah.
Because I was out there this afternoon, 34 degrees, was quite pleasant. Yesterday, 38, 39 degrees, and that wind had some bite to it, man. It was painful. So the wind won't be churning the water. The wind won't be mixing it up. And, yeah, we got one more night of this. And then it starts to warm up pretty dramatically, and then 77 degrees by the weekend. But it just depends on how long it stays that cold. But the lack of wind tonight is probably a good thing. That's probably going to help a little bit. The wind last night was savage. I mean, it would not quit. Had gale warnings offshore, which I think is like 50 miles an hour is where they call it a gale. 50 or 55, and it was every bit of 35 to 40 right here in the backyard.
The last freeze, it was 17 to 20 for 4 or 5 days straight.
Yes.
And it blew pretty stinking good that whole time too.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Caleb, and I'm going to get to the chart that you have, and you can walk us through that in a minute. But before we do that, you mentioned trout, redfish. What about snook and tarpon? And maybe Dean might help on this, and Scott on the tarpon in terms of because tarpon are, first of all, let me start with Scott. Are they still kind of meandering? Because this is bad news for them.
Yeah, it's really bad news. I mean, that last freeze, there was a bunch of dead tarpon in Galveston. It was tarpon floating up, and people were going, I didn't know we had tarpon. Yeah. And it was in some of the areas that I used to fish when I was there, when I tried to find the babies. And a couple of posts got put up on there, and a few people got kind of irritated because it was kind of hush stuff where they were finding these. But sand pits and places like that, some of it's got deep enough water that maybe they'll survive if there was a thermocline way down deep. But there's going to be a whole bunch of those baby tarpon that are our resident tarpon that are going to be gone.
Right there in the marina. Right there in the marina where we keep our boats. In the last big freeze, we pulled 6 tarpon out of there and several snook that were 32 to 36 inches. And they don't, I don't know if Caleb has the statistics on those, but they were the first ones to float, were the snook and the tarpon.
Well, they're tropical.
So, and this is all lethal effects after 24 hours. A juvenile snook is 48 degrees, an adult snook is 43 degrees. A juvenile tarpon is 50 degrees, and an adult tarpon is 40 degrees.
Yeah, so much higher temperature they can get affected there. All right, so Caleb, I'm calling this up on the group page, on the live feed, I should say, on YouTube. But you can talk us through it for those who are listening on the podcast.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we use when we're going off of this stuff. But this is Eagle Point in Galveston. The water temperature at 5:30 the other day, I guess, 5:30 this morning. I don't know. This GMT's messed up, and if I went through and changed everything.
Yeah, that's Greenwich Mountain Time, Greenwich Median Time or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it started It started here, but we are sitting at, oh, that's conductivity. I was so confused. 39 degrees is where we're at right now. It bottomed out at 38.8, and this is Eagle Point in Galveston. And so that one had me bothered. And then I moved down to Matagorda, and again, we're at 39. And right now it is currently bottomed out in Matagorda at 39 degrees.
It looks like about 5 hours there of 38, 39 degrees.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's call it. Let's see, what was it for trout? It was 45 degrees is the lethality of it, and we're at 43.2. I could do stuff to stretch it out, but let's say, I mean, it's pretty safe to say we're 10 or 12 hours into below 45 degrees. 39 degrees in Matagorda. I moved on down to Port O'Connor. This is the little jetties at Port O'Connor, and they're starting to warm back up. It looks like they bottomed out at 36.9, give or take, and now they're warmed up to 39.2. But then it got a little less concerning. This is Rockport, and Rockport right now is bottomed out at 46.9. It's
okay.
And then moving on down, like the rest of it is almost a non-issue. Baffin Bay bottomed at 46.4, is 47.1. Port Mansfield, 52.2 is the low they've had there. And then Isabel, heck, you can still wet wade, 54.3 in Isabel.
Well, I don't know about that.
So,
I don't know about
if
that.
anybody wants to check it out, it's tidesandcurrents.noaa.gov. You just go, you end up this little map right here, and this map will show you the state of Texas, and you can grab anything you want from it. So if you want to get in a Facebook argument, be educated.
Yeah, that is very, very, it's self-explanatory how it does. All right, so Dean, what about habitat? Hello there, Joe. I see Joe on the camera now, but what about habitat specifically down south where we are and below? A lot of mangroves man, I was just bragging about this with you when we were out the other day. I was like, man, look at all those mangroves. They look good. And what did you tell me? Yeah, they're all about to go dead again.
Well, the black mangroves will tolerate this very well. I mean, this is not going to be what it was last time where it killed everything. There'll be some leaves and stuff that fall off, but the black mangroves will do very well. I went and looked at the ones, my little baby red mangroves that are coming up on like almost a 3-year project now, and they all had ice on them. They didn't have ice in the water. So the last time it froze, when the wind blew, as the water splashed up, it like coated the stalks in ice. They didn't have a chance. This one was just the rain that fell on them and froze. So hopefully those do. But I do got a little crop, man. I brought my little babies that were growing in the patio. They're right here under my feet right now. I got them all inside. It's the never-ending red mangrove project, but I don't know, man. I don't think the black mangroves are going to be hit that hard. You know, the fun little red ones that are scattered around, yeah, they're going to take a beating.
Anything we should know or worry about or just watch, Scott? When I was driving back Sunday, I was telling Dean the tides were so far out. And I can't imagine that they came back in very much in terms of the freeze and the tides being so low and what else it might affect that way.
Well, the tides got blown way out, so that helps push the fish out of the shallows. That's a big help for it. They're coming back up now. Hopefully that's some good Gulf water coming in, maybe the little warmer water with a rising tide. Life with a puppy, man.
He's contributing.
Yeah, she's not happy about this. I think that honestly, I think we're okay. Not great. I think we're going to lose some fish, but I think that overall this isn't going to be near as bad as the previous one. Like I said, I keep looking over at Louisiana, and I haven't looked at the water temperatures, but some of our listeners are over there and they're sending stuff. And
Franklin was talking about it's pretty bad.
Down in the 30s. The thing that does bother me is the depth deal that I did earlier, where it was 40 to 42 and 8 to 15 feet of water. Yes, the question came up, where are those temperatures that we're getting? Those are mostly surface temperatures on those tidal gauges. That's where we measure it. That's why I went out and threw the weighted thermometer to get a depth reading.
Mhm.
And the surface over there was 39, and at 15 feet, it was 40 to 42.
Right.
So I think all that wind is what bothered all that. I mean, it got
Mhm.
it churned in there pretty good. I don't know. We're guessing. We're all
Yeah.
just, we're taking educated guesses here from what we've seen in the past, and every situation's a little bit different. This one, I think, is going to be better because of how long it took
Mhm.
for it to, we had a long, slow drop, and that moved a lot of fish. Hopefully they moved to the jetties, because I'm looking at the jetties, and the jetties are like 48 degrees.
Mhm.
So hopefully they moved out there.
Glenn's asking what the surface temp was when you took the deeper readings.
It was 39.
Oh,
39
okay.
on top,
Just about a
and
degree.
Yeah, it's 40 to 42 down deep and 39 on top. So
Mhm.
it wasn't much difference. There wasn't a big thermocline down there like I was hoping. I was really hoping I was going to throw that thing out there and bring it back at, high 40s or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
Didn't happen. Not in the spots that I checked.
Caleb, you're showing us now, and talk us through it for those on the podcast audio version, the tides and what you think that might mean on various areas of the coast.
Yeah, read the room, Scott. When the graph comes up, it's my turn to talk. So I plotted this one from January 17th on to today. The cool part about it is it dropped. This is Matagorda. It dropped a little bit below zero with that big wind, but now it's coming back up. This isn't the debilitating. The flats are blown dry. There's nowhere to go except some little puddles. It's not a super high tide, but it's not that -1, -1.5, and it's coming back in pretty well. And like Dean said, the wind is forecasted to slow down and chill out. So I think that we're going to have some water coming back in. And so when they're sitting in deeper water, when they're sitting in deep water, it's just going to continue to get a little bit deeper and not stay real low with it. But again, there's all kinds of things in that 21 freeze that happened that aren't happening here. I mean, we went through it last night. Now the sun's out, like Dean said. There's some positivity to it.
Yeah, and now Dean, actually Jordan talked about this on the comments here. Do you expect, especially as tonight's going to get a lot colder, especially mid coast and up, maybe Texas Parks and Wildlife might close a couple of areas?
I don't think it's that dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and I mean, if they close it tomorrow, it's all
what does
over.
it mean?
It's starting to warm over. It's the time is kind of passed on that. I did not go over to Com Brown Harbor and look at what was going on over there. I was at the marina, but the marina was loaded with bait fish. I was kind of tempted to go back with a fishing pole and cast in there, see if there was any good fish in there with them, but it's too cold for that kind of research, man. It's gonna remain a theory.
That kind of research. Yeah, and we're going to talk about, just for those listening, and here in a minute, we're going to talk about coming out of the freeze, and we got some questions here on the live stream about what y'all's approaches will be. We're gonna talk about that in just a second, but just kind of put a bow on all this in terms of where we are now and tomorrow. Let's talk about baitfish, and what might happen there. Dean, I'll go ahead and start with you again. Shrimp. Some hatches that maybe have happened out there, smaller bait. What is that going to do?
Well, at this time of year, we have the brown shrimp, the little hoppers, is what starts to hatch out, becomes prevalent. The mullet that are there, I mean, when we fished the other day, that was another kind of good example of what was there, even through the cold. I mean, we found a lot of mullet that were just lazy. They were there. But I mean, we still got a couple. This is barely the middle of January. We still got some time before we start thinking about bait hatches and, the bay kind of coming back to life as it does in the spring. What's there is just going to be there for now through most of February. I know like up in Matagorda, Galveston, that it happens way sooner. I have no idea, no explanation. I mean, I'm not a shrimpologist on how that works, but me and Scott have compared notes for 20 years, and every year those shrimp start popping, coming out of those marshes around Galveston and even north of there. And it just does not happen here down south at that rate. Very different ecosystem. It's flats, it's seagrass, it's, no marshes, no back drains, no lakes. So those hatches and those things happen at a very different time on the upper coast. We don't get that explosion of life until way later in the spring.
Mm-hmm. Scott, what are your thoughts upper coast? Because and going into Louisiana, and Caleb, feel free to hop in, because this is something like truly they've never or very, very rarely experienced. But Scott, upper coast, then Caleb.
It's going to affect the bait. It's going to kill off a lot of the bait fish. And what we always see after a freeze, when it does kill off some bait fish, kills off some trout and some reds, is an explosion in the spring. Mm-hmm. It's more bait than you ever see. It's nature taking care of herself. Mm-hmm. There'll be fewer predators, and the bait just goes crazy. That spring after the 21 freeze,
everywhere.
My tarpon fishing was a pain in the butt the first few months, because there was so much shad out on the beachfront. Mm-hmm. There was miles and miles and miles of shad. Tarpon didn't have to eat anything else. They could just swim around with their mouth open. Mm-hmm. So it usually results in a big, huge push of bait. The fish that do survive are usually in pretty good shape because of it.
Caleb, how about our friends and listeners in Louisiana?
I agree with Scott. Typically the spring afterwards is pretty good. The last really good spring of redfishing I had was that 21 year. Every trout guide had a pretty good redfishing year that year too, and the redfishing got significantly less good after that. But no, I mean, I agree with Scott. And again, I'm hesitant to throw any just hardcore forecast out there, because I could talk about Louisiana all I want, but the fellow that I've been talking to, he's in Louisiana right now, and he's sending me a ruler and stuck in his snow, and it's like 10, 12 inches of snow over there.
Man.
They got a lot more than we got over here. So I'm gonna plead the fifth on making any predictions for Louisiana at this point.
Yeah,
I saw earlier National Weather Service issued a blizzard warning for Lake Charles. It's never happened before.
Yeah,
that was an actual official National Weather Service blizzard warning for Lake Charles.
Yeah, 10 or 12 inches in Homa. What?
And the problem with that, in addition to our, the wind and the cold, that's cold falling on the water.
Yeah.
That 10 inches didn't just fall on land. So you got 10 inches of snow falling on the marsh, and that's going to chill the water quite a bit.
And I happen to have it on good authority that there was a bunch of redfish that the deepest water within 10 miles of them was 2 feet.
Oh,
so I'm, like I said, I'm gonna I don't even know what the word is. Redact, retract. I'm just not going to talk about it.
Redact was good. I'm proud of you. No, I'm proud of you.
There's people in my position that make themselves look like idiots on Facebook, and I refuse to be that guy this time.
Not this time, buddy.
Not this time.
By the way, speaking of which, how's that prop doing? Dude, how many times did you take out that boat before you chipped the prop?
Not very many. They just throw stuff over there. I don't know what. I ran through a cut I've been through 5,000 times, and there just happened to be a bread pipe across it this time. And
it was a good chunk.
The fun part is me and Chuck McKinney were up on the helm, and then Trevor Kusha, a buddy of mine from Port Isabel, he has never been to Louisiana. He's never done anything except the wide open flats of South Texas. And watching that kid grab powder coat while I was running around back there, and I looked over at Chuck. I said, "Man, we ain't even got to the good stuff yet. This kid's already." But yeah, and while we're at it, let me defend myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
the video that got put up where I'm and going through that little bitty narrow thing, that I was trolling through it. The edges of my boat just touched grass. All right. This is standard procedure.
Well, not for all of us.
We were fine.
not for all of us.
I mean,
did you break your troll motor propeller too?
No, I didn't know. I did. Well, that's lessons learned. In the old days, I would have just romped on that trolling motor, but I folded it up real nice and got down the motor and gave it a little bit of encouragement and slid through 8 feet of mud. And these trout people are making this a bigger deal than it needs to be.
You're maturing.
Now the next video I posted up where I missed my turn and realized I had nothing left with no water in it. That was a bit more puckering.
That was,
but we were okay with that. And whoever the hell decided to put "watch out for the grass" on my thing, like we're tearing up the bottom, I'm more concerned about the 4 foot of it that's on dry land beside me at this moment. Condolences to the coontail.
But the funny thing is, it doesn't really happen to the rest of us that much.
Did you see this? I mean, there might be fish back there.
There might be.
There might be fish back there.
You're not wrong.
And when you got Chuck McKinney beside you going, nail it. I mean, you got to respect your elders. You also have Chuck McKinney beside you when you're going about, I was probably going 25, 30 when I missed the turn. And as the nose of my boat is getting level with it, he goes, right here.
Turn right here.
We can't do that.
I'm just glad we don't have that option around here. Not even a concern. I mean, usually when we're doing that, you can see the bottom. It's crystal clear, and we're just not winding through those paths. The kind of it's foreign to me, but
stuff happens sudden. So I chipped that skeg on it was probably like a 3-inch pipe that was going across this cut that I run through all the time. I've actually fished that cut. I've sat at it for 10 hours at a time. I've cast checks off of that cut. I know that cut very well. Where I thought I hit it was whenever I ran over the water separator with a piece of pipe hanging off of it later in the day. But I was going back. I was like, man, I saw that separator and I jerked my boat right and it stood up the left pontoon. And I just kind of slid down with that pontoon. It didn't hit the skeg there. And then I was thinking, but there was a good bonk first thing in the morning. That's what happened.
Are you fishing in the water treatment plant or something?
Hey,
yes,
the hurricanes down there are severe, dude.
Yeah.
There's one place we fish. I promise you, it's every bit of 15 miles from town. And there is a marsh that has a double wide trailer house in it, which is really cool because it's like just set on this island like they hauled it out there. It's got a Mercedes, a Tahoe, 4 or 5 Sierras. There is a man. What the heck else? It's pretty cool. We
helicopter.
There might be a helicopter back there, Dean. There might be. And Homa. What I was telling Trevor, what you have to learn about Louisiana is you look at the direction the hurricanes came in and just figure out where it blew town to, and you be careful there.
So. One thing, well, before we move on, because I want to talk about fishing and coming out of this and what people want to know about that and catching more fish, I got to go to my resident weather complainer like me, and that would be one Dean Thomas. I don't know why this bothers me so much, but you realize they called this thing a winter storm Enzo. They haven't called any winter storm ever by a name like a hurricane until I looked it up, until 2012, I believe. Yeah, it was the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel said, "Hey, this would be good if we can bring in more branding and panic and all this stuff."
It sells more beer.
Yeah,
it sells more toilet paper. It sells more whatever the hell else people were at HEB hoarding.
Yeah,
and I'm sticking to my original thought. So much drama. So much leading up to this, scaring the crap out of the old people. It's a marketing tool, man. They sell stuff. Friend of mine in who was it? In Houston, it was either Kemah or Baycliff. The line was out the door and around the corner. HEB was full to capacity to where people were standing in line and they're hoarding the toilet paper again. It's
toilet
like
paper. What toilet paper is all? I mean, I get
toilet
water,
paper has just become a thing, but yes, they give it a name. They They're still selling commercials on the news. And here we go. People of the North, I have sympathy. I have much sympathy for the people of the North. It sprinkled ice last night for a couple hours. Shut this town down. Closed the airports, closed everything. And in Buffalo, New York, they still took their kids to school today.
Oh yeah.
They still did everything they have to do. I don't know how they live like this, but yes.
In Buffalo, New York, I bet
ice.
the radio host could back out of his driveway too.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
We don't put our children on the road because of people like John. It has nothing to do with anything else.
And that's it. We're protecting ourselves from ourselves.
Oh man.
My buddies from South Dakota have been sending me texts of like the dudes wearing like the big fur parkas and everything. I said, and they're all laughing. I bet you're dressed like this right now. I said, you dang right we are.
Maybe. Maybe.
But we still have the folks from Minnesota and Quebec and such, the Winter Texans. They're still walking in HEB in their Bermuda shorts, man. So,
they're like, what's wrong with you? Wussies?
yes, it's just the local Southern folks that are quite alarmed. But yes, the drama that led up to it, that leads up to this, and it's a bit much sometimes. You just got to turn it off and walk away.
Y'all all got plenty of toilet paper? That's the one that just blows me away.
I can't figure that one out.
I got in a survival mode, I'm thinking toilet paper is the last thing on the list. I could live on an old T-shirt for probably the rest of my life.
I'm wearing my holy sock just in case.
Your whole sock.
This one can be sacrificed.
That'll work.
But yeah,
that'll work. That'll do the job.
It's just crazy. I was actually talking to the lady at HEB at the little checkout as we were sitting there, and she even said that the computer automatically ups their toilet paper shipments in advance of these storms because they know the computer knows what's going to happen.
I
it just automatically shows up.
I knew Dean would be all over this.
18-wheeler full of Charmin or whatever the hell it is.
And Jay Carson that brings up a great point. He's like, what about, I don't know, food? You might need some food at some point more than toilet paper.
Hey man, look, back in the day, whenever it really hit the fan, when people were going nuts, like fighting in the parking lot over toilet paper, I was almost getting a little apprehensive. And then I walked into the store and I realized that the pharmacy was still intact and it was only the toilet paper. I was like, nobody's hoarding medicine. Oh, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And even during COVID, during COVID, it's
well,
like, we need toilet
worse.
paper. Why do you need toilet paper? You can get toilet paper.
So, do people not need toilet paper when it's warm?
Yes.
Do they not need toilet paper in good times?
Oh boy.
Well, hey, while we're at it, let's all stop. John's camera all of a sudden got better, and I think it's because he has his Zuckerberg oversized XL black T-shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
Like he looks like a media powerhouse all of a sudden.
Well, you want me to tell you a little behind the curtain stuff here? I just texted my wife. I said, I think so this ring light in front of me, and fortunately, my laptop is on battery. But they're working on battery. I guess the breaker tripped, or maybe the power went out. I don't know at my house, but we're good, man. We still got battery power. Still got internet.
I'm not even being sarcastic right now. You look better without light on you.
Handsome. You can say
I looked up and I was like, man, his camera got good all of a sudden.
Hey, that's why he's so successful in radio.
That's it.
That's right. All right, Scott, let's get out of this. Let's get out of the freeze talk and what's happening. And just so people know, we will absolutely be, having updates next week's podcast, because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow and in the coming days with perhaps fish floating, etc. But you're coming out of the freeze at some point, Scott, and people, it's a different sort of animal in terms of approach. We've had a couple of comments here already. I'll try to find them as I'm talking. about what some of the things are that you absolutely positively do. We'll get to what would Scott do, what would Caleb do, and Dean later in terms of this coming weekend when the weather might be better. But just in general, Scott, you're coming out of this, what's your plan of attack, and what's your approach just with fish in general?
Now's behind one of these. This is what we're talking about, seeing that one piece of bait flipping being something to get excited about. During the summertime, bait flipping here, bait flipping there, you just keep on going until you find a concentration. This time of year, you see the bait flip. One little mullet flipping can lead you to a bunch of fish. That's what you want to start watching as you're coming out of it. As the sun comes out, it depends on how warm it gets behind this, as to how shallow they'll go back. Redfish tend to go back up first, and then the trout will follow. If you see baitfish up shallow, it's warm enough. All that stuff about throwing and you got to work it like molasses and super slow, that's in effect right now. But once you see baitfish up on the flats, if the baitfish is moving, you can't reel fast enough to keep it away from a trout or redfish.
And Dean, go ahead.
I'm gonna move. I'm just gonna beat Dean to it, because Dean always says it best. Once they acclimate to that cold and that water starts warming up, then it's a whole different ball game than when they're just cold.
Oh, well, before I move on, Caleb, Scott alluded to it. Working your baits. What baits?
I mean, believe it or not, a corky or a corky or a double D. Or you can drag plastics on the bottom and do just fine. That's what a lot of people do whenever there's cold and slow like that. And they're literally just dragging it with a little bitty old hop every now and again. Me personally, I'm gonna go to a corky most likely. Oh boy, he's learned all the tricks. You look like the Jesus on Dogma.
I just made, for those listening, I just made myself full screen. I got rid of
That is not necessary. I want John to tell y'all what the fish were doing just this past weekend while we were fishing. Tell them about the bait and what we were using. And so, yeah, let's hear John's perspective.
Well,
we hear us all the time.
Dean and I I think we were about 2 margaritas into the Texans game. And Dean turns to me and says, "Hey," as Dean is wont to do, what can we talk about next week on the podcast? And I said, well, that was a pretty good Dean, wasn't it?
That was very good.
That weather forecast is bullshit.
Bullshit.
And I said, well, what about, we were fishing today. By the way, Caleb, I caught the perfect tournament redfish. Like it was 27 and 11/12. It was right at 28. It had to have been 9 pounds. It was a fat son gun. But anyway, so we were catching some fish, and I told Dean, I said, well, we didn't really see a lot of bait. We saw a couple of mullet here and there, but we saw a bunch of mud boils, like right under our feet, mud boil. And we would drift a little more or move a little more, whatever, trolling motor, another mud boil. So Dean, I'm gonna let you take it from there and explain some of the maybe not so obvious signs that might be coming into play here.
Exactly. So just like Scott was talking about, one flick of a mullet will give it away. Because over the past week, and the water temperature at the lowest it was about 7 or 8 days ago was 49 degrees. It slowly crept up, but we've been fishing in like 55, 57 degree water for most of the week. And I've gone to one spot, nothing, devoid of life, nothing, no fish. Second spot, spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, give it a good shot, just nothing. Third or fourth spot, when you find them, you're just looking for simple little clues, one flick of bait, one big mud stir on the bottom, and that is when you park it. You park it right there, which is kind of funny because the day before, my remote control on my troll motor, my batteries went dead. And I was telling John, I was like, man, I got to get some AAA batteries. I said, we got nothing. And we got about halfway out there in the morning. And I was like, dang, I didn't get any batteries. And I was like, oh, hell, we'll just make the best of it.
Oh, we did.
But all that being said, the fact that we did not have to move when we found those big mud stirs under the boat, when we found the mullet that wasn't giving away a lot of clues. There were fish all in that area.
There were.
And what they hit, John, what did the big one eat?
Topwater, baby.
Exactly.
In about a foot of water, not even
and super aggressive
back out of the water, and very aggressive
and aggressive blow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of theories and baits and what you use, you know, to going low and slow. And so just to prove a point, I'm going behind John with a soft plastic, all subsurface, 0 strikes, 0 hits. He got all the blow-ups, all the fish on Topwater.
We were trolling down a canal in Louisiana the other day, and it was a deep canal with about a 1 foot mud flat. And there was this dolphin. He had haul butt and jump up on the mud flat like Shamu coming up on the stage to get his sardine.
Mm-hmm.
And he would slide in a circle and just crash everything on this flat and then do like the worm and fall back off in there. And I hope he died in the freeze.
We saw.
Yeah, we had dolphins
in less than 2 feet of water, 1.5 feet.
Yeah,
Water.
yeah, we had dolphins in a foot of water as well.
I've decided I'm gonna start carrying a slingshot and marbles on the boat.
Slingshots work, man. And the thing about the slingshot, I mean, people will get alarmed. They'll be like, "Oh man, these dudes are shooting dolphins." Here's the deal: you don't have to hit them. It's just the noise in the water. It is just that little. It is alarming to them.
It's a bonus if you do, but you don't have to hit them.
Nobody.
That was 100% my plan.
Nobody is shooting dolphins.
I'm making a video of it, but I'm running out of the expletive beep sounds to use in it because I really put a narrative about them dolphins.
Scott's just rubbing his forehead like, good Lord.
Nah, but we can.
We like to stay away from violating federal laws here. You know, I mean, just saying.
There's not a real hard and fast line, but federal law probably is it.
No, but hey, Dean's not wrong. I'll take a 1/4 ounce jig head and just crash it right beside him, and it'll roll them out.
Exactly. Yes. If you throw at them and it splashes next to them, they will bug out of there. They just don't like those noises.
Well, being as how they're 1.5 feet. They're beside my boat.
Why are dolphins held why are dolphins held in such a high regard?
I have a theory, and I'm being serious.
They cute
movies and TV. Movies and TV have romanticized them, and because they're so smart and talked about how smart they are, and they communicate and they tell you, where danger is, and they're saving people and all that. I think they've been romantic. If they'd been doing that with flounder, flounder would be on the federal.
Yeah, flounder made one
flounder
one time a Little Mermaid.
If a flounder could jump through a flaming loop, we would have a whole another situation going on. But no, hey, if you want to entertain yourself, go on YouTube and search dysfunctional dolphin videos. And yes, the truth.
At what point in your day have you been, you know what?
I'm going to search dysfunctional dolphin videos.
Dolphin videos.
It's out there.
That is not my Google bar.
I am so tempted to open another tab here and actually search that. Hold on.
Put it on the screen.
I am.
Look, this is a family show, or I would explain it into more detail. I'll let you do your own research. I'll let you make your own decisions.
I'll be damned. He's not wrong.
I would not lie to you people.
I'll be damned. He's not wrong. Dysfunctional dolphin videos. There is such a thing.
YouTube is blowing up right now.
There's some dude out there that put up dysfunctional a video and it's done okay. And over the next 30 days, when our base gets a hold of it, and go, "What the hell happened to my video?"
I'm killing it.
Man, I need to make more.
So now that John searched that as he's scrolling, that's all he's gonna get, man. He's gonna get every messed up dolphin video on the internet.
I'm done for about a week. I'm done.
That might be how I get the flat earthers off of Facebook. I'd rather watch dolphins.
Oh boy, Scott, before we get to what was Scott doing, Dean and Caleb, one more, just kind of put a bow on what you're throwing. We were hitting top waters, but various different areas that listen to our podcast are in deeper water, Louisiana, upper Texas coast, etc. What are some options for our fishermen out there?
Big paddle tails, big swim bait paddle tails. I would go that route. The freezes tend to kill more of the smaller bait fish. What's left is the bigger bait fish. So try to match the hatch, match what's out there. Going with some of those big old paddle tails might work for you, and vary your jig head size to fish different depths and different speeds. It's all conjecture, like I said. Right now, we'll figure it out as time goes on. But just watch what bait you see coming back and try to match that up. We get way too tied up in there's a January bait and a February bait, and fish are going to eat fish. They're going to eat shrimp. They're going to eat whatever they can find. If you're talking about redfish, like in Louisiana in the marsh, what I found a whole lot of times in the dead of winter, they're eating the eels. There's these little small eels over there in that mud.
Oh, I might throw that eel that Mark gave me. Finally get something. That little snake. Hell yeah. That's what I've been wanting to catch a redfish on that so bad.
They will. And Norton Sand Eel's entire lure line is after one of them.
Yeah. And I keep that thing right in my boat, which, by the way, my boat is not there anymore. Anybody interested? I took my boat over to the boatyard. I was going to sell it myself, but I don't want to mess with all that. I know they have the resources and everything. So 2022 Freedom Warrior doesn't have very many hours. They'll tell you exactly how many. And all the bells and whistles, everything you can think of is on there. And I'm going to get, I think I mentioned this last week. They're going to come out. So maybe some of our listeners will want this too. The Chet is going to come out with the Bite Me edition of the Freedom Warrior, which is going to have the Freedom logo. It's going to say Bite Me edition next to it. And it's top of the line, everything, from seats to trolling motor to everything you can imagine. Electronics is going to be top of the line. It's going to be the Bite Me edition.
Integrated popping cork rack.
And it's going to have a popping cork rack. You know that. Park Office already told me he's going to make a custom taco tray, a new taco tray for it. So I can have a brand new taco tray.
I'm going to get him to do you a cutout in the floor where you can actually see the fuel tank, where you can see the gas tank, and you don't have to rely on that little needle that goes back and forth.
Captain John says dual fuel primers and gas gauges. Yeah, man, let's go dual. That's the custom one. That's the Bite Me edition.
You could run a really long hose and mount the fuel bulb right on your dash.
Oh, yeah. They'll just start squeezing it every time.
John, why you do that? I don't know. It's a stress ball or something. They put it in the Bite Me edition.
It's a turbo. It goes faster when he does that, too.
Yeah. Comes with Stiff and Quick, Cody says. That's Stiff and Quick, man. I'm telling you. That bill of my hat. Y'all can laugh all you want. Stay straight. Hard. It's a hard bill of the hat.
Oh, we're going to laugh.
Fuel alarm with emergency flashers. It's all right. I can take all this stuff. All right. So this is going to be an interesting what would Scott do? What would Caleb do?
You can put your emergency flashers on when you're paddling with your net.
Of all the things, that's what Scott was saying the other day too. It didn't work great. I'm not going to lie, but it worked.
Sound like it didn't work at all.
It took about 45
gave you a heart attack.
It took about 45 minutes to move about 10 feet.
Hey, is this boat going to have? Is it going to come with one of them defibrillator things you can put inside?
Just so I can do it myself. It could have all kinds of like the cramp stuff, pickle juice, and all that stuff. But anyway, and oh God, come on, Jordan. That was just a cheap shot right there. How about a urinal so you don't pee on the crackhead behind the gas station? A net with no holes. It's all right. I can take it. Like I said, I could take it. It's all fun and games here. All right. So interesting. What would Scott do and Dean and Caleb this week? Because obviously it's going to be really cold for another day or two. They're saying all the way into Thursday, but then it heats up. I mean, Caleb, literally, what would you do? And let's talk about some places up and down the coast too, because of the different degrees of freeze.
I'll let those two guys get scientific and smart about it. What I would do personally is fish on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
The wind's going to turn out of the south, and then Tuesday we've got a northeastern front coming in, so you're going to get a little bit of that pre-front action. The water is going to be warmed up. Monday is the day I would go. So Saturday and Sunday, the barometer's through the roof. I want to throw out there that I saw today or the other day a handheld fishing barometer that told you what the barometer was, and I'm guessing Scott doesn't own that company, but somebody has put their livelihood on the line. Now, that being said, for some reason, from 30 to 30.4 was the good area in there.
Really? I always thought it was just under 30.
Okay, hang on.
You're correct. You're correct. It's garbage, but they gotta put out a barometer for it.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get into the science of things, but now you're going to go analyzing the barometer.
I immediately regret my choice of words.
So you're down Monday, down south. Dean, you're out there all the freaking time. What would you recommend to our fine people?
Well, I recommend you get out there and go fishing. I don't know, man. I mean, it's so after these things, you go out there and you kind of start over again. You know, you go and figure it out. It's not like a lot of those week or shows where you say, what will we do? And you got it all figured out. And it's like, man, I got me a plan. This is what I'm going to do. What's interesting about us on this one is the tide did not drop out. We have not had any ultra low. We had lower tides than this with the last full moon phase, which was a couple weeks ago when it dropped out. When the northeast wind blows here, it stacks it up. It's just the way the shoreline is, and when the wind blows, it stacks up the water. So the flats are still covered up. The flats are still deep. The flats are, I mean, you can run anywhere you want. It was like 1.2, 1.3 today, which is pretty normal tide. And I mean, what I'm going to do to start out is I'm going to go and fish around areas that have like little channels, little indentions, just deeper spots in the flats. Places that are connected to the intercoastal, places that are connected to the drop-offs, little, not truly defined drains like you think of in the marsh, just little indentions where fish can kind of nestle up to the edge of the drop-offs and have access to deep water, but still be shallow.
Yeah.
A lot of like what we did the other day.
Absolutely. It worked. Scott, I know you're in Port O'Connor, but you know everything about Upper Coast and beyond. Help our listeners out there if you can on what the plan of attack might be.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what Caleb's talking about with the weather. It ain't the math ain't mathing, but because I got southeast prefrontal Saturday and Sunday, so those would be the times that you might want to get out there and go wading for that big trout. They should be starting to move back up. Temperatures in the high 50s, low 60s, and overcast and kind of misty looking from what I'm seeing here, and southeast winds. That's Pat Gardner will be out there, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
He's gonna be out there wading and chunking a corky. Then the front blows in on Monday. It's a little light front. It's not anything big, but you got that pre-front that you can work out with. As far as what I like to do, my redfish up shallow, and I don't know, it's going to be one of those, like Dean said, it's starting over. You know, you go out there, I'll start working the edges of the flats. We did lose quite a bit of water, but it's all coming back pretty quick now. As it comes back in, it gets a little bit warmer. We get a little sunshine on it for a couple of days. Those reds, they don't care. I've caught them out there when the air temperature's in the 30s and they're still up there shallow. As long as the water temperature comes up a little and the bait fish will come back, they'll be there.
Water will be clear too.
All right.
While we were talking, I just sent a message over to Shane, and he
Shane
said
Bonneau, by the way, for those who don't know.
He hasn't gotten any notification from Parks and Wildlife about the closures. Don't know why. That stuff, it's not for when the freeze is happening. It's for the days after the freeze when the fish are still stunned and they're just hanging out in those deep holes and they're real vulnerable. That's when people go in there and take advantage of them and start foul hooking them and doing crap like that.
Yeah.
As they start warming up and they're hanging along the edge of the bulkheads, when the bulkheads start warming the water, that's where that comes into play. So that's why they usually, if they're going to shut it down, it'll usually be right behind the front and for several days afterwards. So it still could happen.
Yeah.
If they were going to do it, I'd say they probably do it today or tomorrow.
Okay.
So just keep an eye out for that if it's some place that you really like to fish.
Okay. Sounds good. Angler you tonight, Caleb, 7 o'clock?
Clint Bargy from West Galveston. He was a fan favorite last time, and we've got him coming back.
How about that? Dean, what you got going on? I'm sure you got some dates coming up as the spring approaches.
Shootout is up and running though, man. We're
Oh,
shipping. I'm in full blown warehouse inventory mode right here behind me.
Yeah.
And I got
a bunch of
orders.
orders.
Shootouts are in stock. Totally revolutionized the drift sock world.
Yeah, so check out that video that we posted here on this page. I'm going to post the one of the one that we've been talking about that some of you already know about, my escapades apparently, but not really, running out of gas. Scott, help us out. What you got going and what anybody might need to know.
Got the photography page. I had all of a sudden I had a little bump in that. I don't know where it got talked about or something, but there was a whole bunch of people got involved in that. About to start up the new contest this year, middle of February.
Oh, nice.
I'll have a bunch of new photos coming here real soon. Other than that, I'm pretty wide open on the books right now. I don't have a whole lot going on. Hoping that we'll get some good calm weather and I can run out there and play with some state water snapper soon. No, I got several people that are interested in doing it. It just hasn't 30, 40 mile an hour winds just aren't real conducive to going out there and playing around on the snapper banks.
Awesome. All right, guys, stay warm. Get your 4-wheel drive going if you have it. When you have the freeze on the black ice on the roads, don't forget to join the group page. Hit us up with some topics and questions there.
So I have one question. So when you went down the hill, why didn't you just keep going in that direction?
Well, because it was a really thin road. There were some kids, all snow. It was like this when the snow was thick and it was still snowing, and there were. I forgot to mention this part. There were some kids sledding next to me down the hill. So they were sledding and I was like waving, hey, and I was just going backwards. I didn't want to kill a kid, basically.
Can you get out of your neighborhood going the other direction?
Well, not up the hill. I have to go all the way around, which I'm planning to do.
I drove a Ford Focus to the top of Mount Crested Butte.
Hey, I was as surprised as you were. I was as surprised as you were. No question.
That was my thing. You got to go downhill to get out of your neighborhood, so that stopped you from going to work.
No, you got to go uphill. So I tried to go uphill and I couldn't, and so then I just had the kids were sledding and I didn't want to kill a kid, and so I had to kind of back down really nice and easy on some flat ground. But now it's all good. It's all good. All right, boys and girls.
Didn't want to go to work today.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm gonna.
There's that.
I really did. I had the doc all set. I was ready. Had all my topics. Was ready.
A lot of referees to complain about.
A lot of referees. God, dog.
Patrick Mahomes, his flopping. I will forever root for whoever's playing Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Mahomes after those flops. And
yes, it was ridiculous. But
the LeBron of the NFL.
No question. All right, you guys have a great week, great weekend. Be safe, stay warm, and of course, next week we'll have an update on all this stuff. So come back right here, 3:30 every Tuesday. We broadcast, we record live, and then I post it hopefully by about 6 p.m. Every Tuesday evening. And I'm going to try to do that today so we can get a lot of people listening to this. You guys catch them up. We will talk to you next time.
Man, this morning I got all excited, went running in the bedroom, told the wife, "There's 4 or 5 inches." And I figured she'd have got excited, but she just said she's used to it and went back to sleep. I don't understand.